This athlete story is about story selling and about a startup athlete who knew that the only way to raise funds for his Olympic dream would be through inviting people into the adventure, sharing the experiences of this whole journey rather than the aspiration of maybe one day standing on top of the podium. So let me take you back to about 1 year before the Salt Lake City Olympics in 2002. I was at a seminar for athletes in Denmark who had a chance of qualifying for those Olympics. And this is where I met Tom Johansen. He was speaking to the athletes from the stage, which was a place that he was clearly familiar with. And he told us all about his very first experience in the bobsled, actually the very first week of training on the real bobsled course. He did it in such a vivid way that we could feel all the bruises and the humiliations that a bobsled track can give a new bob pilot and his crew. Oh, you could feel the energy being sucked out of you for each crash and the courage needed to get back up again. And then he told us that sharing this experience in the form of public speaking, like he was doing right there, was how he had managed to finance the Olympic quest that they were on. And that we could all do the same. I was amazed. I thought it was so cool the way that he could share his story and inspire other people like I had just been inspired. He was telling me I could be inviting people into a very similar story about my beginnings and make money. And I wanted that to be me one day. Anyways, this is not about me, but Tom's point about our stories having value to other people clearly stayed with me, and I thought it might inspire you too. So stay tuned. This is Athlete Story, and I'm your host and coach, Anja Bolbjerg, dedicated to helping athletes like you own your sports career. If you are a world-class athlete or simply into sports, I suggest you subscribe to my show right now because I'll be posting lots more athlete stories and chats with world-class sports insiders and experts. Tom Johansen had started a bobsled team in Denmark with the goal of going to the Salt Lake City Olympics in 2002. And there are no bobsled facilities to be found anywhere in Denmark, and I actually don't even think we have enough vertical drop to make one anywhere. Anyways, Tom Johansen's Cool Runnings inspired story does not just show how your athlete story can add value to others. It also shows how you yourself can gain valuable insight and self-awareness about who you are and what you're meant to do, and how athletes in the so-called smaller sports have to develop real entrepreneurial skills in order to create and sustain their sports career. And I'm not just talking about resilience and focus and some of those other highly appraised skills that athletes need to develop. I'm talking about such skills as team building, creating the whole structure, project management, budgeting, fundraising, the vision aspect, and storytelling or story selling, as Tom would say. There's so much to take away from this episode, and I am delighted to introduce you to a startup athlete from before startup was even a word. So let's welcome Tom Johansen, my friends. Hi Tom, welcome to the show Athlete Story. I am so happy you could join us today.
Likewise, I've been looking forward for this since we made the agreement on that I should be on the show.
Good to hear, good to hear. Well, you're kind of one of my heroes when it comes to making sport that is basically non-existent in a country and making a whole team and a structure around this one project when you started back in the late 90s, I think.
Exactly.
Making a bobsled team for Denmark. I suppose it was maybe inspired by that movie back then with the Jamaican team. Is that correct?
It was in 1995, 1 year after the Lillehammer Olympic Games, when Walt Disney released the movie picture called Cool Runnings. I saw the film and saw the movie in a German cinema, and I remember exactly that all the audience were all the other ones in the audience, they were laughing and thought it was a hilarious, good entertainment. But I was somehow in very, very mixed emotions because I had this funny feeling that I would so much have loved that it would be my story, that I found the back door to the Olympics instead of that it was the Jamaicans. So months later, when I saw that movie in the German cinema, I decided, okay, it could be so awesome to make a Danish team. But at that time, I had just founded my own company as a business entrepreneur. I was 25 for the first time in my life. And I had this idea that now I'm going to conquer the world as a businessman, as a sales I had the agency on a big fashion company, and I thought, wow, this is my way. And first 3 years after, when I had to realize that I couldn't get into the market with this agency, I said, okay, what is it I'm really dreaming of if I should restart again? And then this idea of founding a Danish national bobsleigh team came up at the age of 28. So we must not forget it was, athletically speaking, it was 5 to 12 to start up such a concept, of course.
Okay, but so you're not coming straight from the couch and wanting to make an Olympic bobsled team, right? You were doing track and field, I think?
Yes, I did track and field from when I was 12 till I was 21, and I, together with my good friends, I also managed to have won Danish championships in the 4x100 meters, and we were very, very proud of that. So I had some very good success together with the team, with great people. But at the time I got the idea of founding the Danish national bobsleigh team, I had actually not been an athlete for 6.5 years only. Well. Yeah. So it is a little bit. It's strange, and it says a lot about me as a person who comes up after 6.5 years of break and only doing a little weight training and some running and stuff like that, who comes up with the idea of establishing a Danish national bobsleigh team. It's typical me.
Okay, so now I know you a little bit, and I know you're a great storyteller. And is the story about this? Is that what's fascinating? Is that what you want to be part of, or did you have athletic ambitions?
No, yeah, and then that's for sure. I am very ambitious guy. People tend to say, not necessarily that I have that feeling myself, but people perceive me as being very ambitious. So when I got the initial idea about making a Danish national bobsleigh team, immediately it was to be as good as possible. So there was no question in my mind that already in the first 2 months that I wanted to do it in the absolutely right way. I wanted to know with myself and my wife, my girlfriend at that time, that we are not doing this as a new funny cool running story, being last or almost last in the field. That was never our idea. Immediately the idea was, how do we do this as professional, as good as it is possible. Having said that, my research was not as good as I would have wished today that it was. So it took 3 or 4 years, the first 3 or 4 years of the 8 years concept where we did it, to really understand the sport by heart and really understand what it takes to become very good. And so the second part of my journey, the last 4 years, the last 5 years was an accelerated story, and the first 3 years, the performance level we managed to get after 3 years should actually have been taking only 1 year. But that's how entrepreneurship actually works.
Well, yeah, it doesn't grow linearly; it grows exponentially,
no,
right?
Exactly. And when you ask me why would I do it, I had this very, very, very deep understanding of that all my qualities as an athlete, as a leader, as a business entrepreneur, that this quest, if I can put it that way, would take all of my qualities, not just some of them, the qualities, but all of them. And I think that is the biggest gift I've had in my life, that there is a situation where I need to bring everything of me into to have success.
Yeah, that's kind of the advantage or the gift of doing a sport from scratch, where there's no structure.
Exactly.
Or anything. You really have to use everything to make it work.
Yeah.
So let's go back to where you say, okay, I'm going to start this project. How did you find the other 3 guys?
Yeah, it's funny. The official story is that I took contact to 7 of my old club mates from the track and field club I was in. That's not totally correct. Actually, the first one I asked if he wanted to be a part of the concept was my brother-in-law, Thomas. And it was the 6th of March 1998. I said, Thomas, let's go to the Olympics 2002 in Salt Lake City. And he said, I think it's a quite good time, and it's too much time to arrange a journey as tourists for the Olympics. I said, no, you misunderstand me. We are not going as tourists. We are supposed to go there as athletes. And then he thought about the and he asked in which sport. I said, in bobsleigh. And it took him 5 seconds. Said, okay, I'm on the team. We can go there. He didn't know anything about bobsleigh either, so it was easy for him. Then it took me further, let's say 3 weeks after seven different persons had signed up for the concept. Nobody really knowing anything about it, but they had this feeling that, okay, Tom knows something about it. And if he does not know something about it, the coach he had actually found in Germany for us, he would know enough about it. And let's say that's half true, or however you would say that in English, because I knew a lot about development projects. I knew a lot about storytelling and selling and stuff like that. But of course, I knew not so much about the sport. So I made mistakes in the beginning of the concept, of course.
Right. And then you were fluent in German, I think, which would help because that's where you went to train and stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I'm pretty fluent in German. Not only I speak the language, but my general knowledge on society, on culture, on mentality is at a very high level. So I can navigate very well in the German society, and that is a huge advantage when it comes to bobsleigh, because in history, bobsleigh, the most successful nation in the world, and still is Germany. So when you want to be good at bobsleighing, it's a very good idea that you're good in German and understanding German mentality.
Okay, so can we kill a myth because the movie's not very nice to the Germans?
No,
the Cool Runnings movie. So were they actually being helpful in this project? And
without the help of first individuals, German individuals, and later on also the German Federation, we signed a cooperation agreement, which we have actually now for the future revitalized. Without German help, there would not be a Danish cool running story. It would have died within, let's say, within 5 or 6 months. And that's one of the beauties of that sport, that all the big nations, they know that they have at least a moral obligation to help the small nations to be able to compete at a acceptable level, else the sport will die.
Yeah.
And this way of being as a very small country in the world, being adopted by one of the great nations is such a beautiful dynamic in this sport. And I think you know something similar from your own athlete career, that if you don't get the help of the big organizations, we cannot survive as Danish winter sports athletes. No. That's impossible.
Exactly.
Yeah. And on the other hand, I know then that then in Denmark, of course, we also have a moral obligation to help smaller nations when it comes to badminton, when it comes to handball, sailing, and stuff like that. And I know that the Danish big federations, where the Danish are the best, they do the same. They do development programs also for those countries who need to develop. So it all gets together. We are all part of one great idea of building a global sports which can kill pardon my French, kill conflicts and bring peace forward. And I think that sport is just the best way to meet with people and to forget about prejudice and conflicts and stuff like that.
Then you have put your team together, more or less, let's say, and now you got to finance it, right? because the bobsled is expensive, as I...
Yeah, the story was that when our German coach said you need 100,000, I said 100,000. Okay, I think we can even at that time we could even maybe
100,000 euros.
Nah, yeah, that was the question because I said 100,000, and it was at that time it was the Deutschmarks. So that would be around 50,000 euros. And I thought he meant for 4 years, but actually he meant per year. So when he gave me that information, how much it would cost per year, 50,000 euros, I immediately understood, okay, this will change my life. Because even if you want to find 50,000 euros in sponsorships, you need to do this professionally. And nobody will give an amateur organization sponsorships for 50,000. I knew it in that second. He said, when I understood that it was 50,000 per year. Honestly, it's not 50,000 per year. It's more 150,000 or even 250,000 per year. But that's the knowledge we gained over the years then. So today there is no question. When you want to build a bobsleigh team, you have to be as ambitious as if you want to make a Tour de France cycling team. There is no difference to that. Only the numbers are different. But in organizational wise and branding wise and recruitment wise and talent scouting wise, it's exactly as doing a Tour de France cycling team. I'm sure of that.
So here you did. Because we were going for those same Olympics in 2002. And I remember we had a seminar before up to the Olympics. And you were on there telling your story and telling us, the other athletes, how we could fundraise. Because you'd been pretty successful with raising this money. Yeah. And this was all with storytelling. And that was like my first, wow, this is excellent. And well, can I just ask you to tell that story again with when you go down the and you come to the end and you kind of go back up?
Yeah. Because that's of course the primary storytelling in the first 4 years was built on, let's say, one major experience with the bobsleigh track, and that was the first week ever doing bobsleigh. So the first 4 years was built around meeting something you would never have expected, totally Waterloo in one's life, because coming to a bobsleigh track, I don't know what we expected, but the way to learn to drive bobsleigh is that you're put in a bobsleigh and you're pushed out in the track, and then you survive as good as you can. So it's almost like being thrown out of a plane with the parachute for the first time in your life, and then you have to intuitively pull the parachute. And that's the way you learn bobsleigh at that time, at least. Mm-hmm. So I never forget. It's at the length of approximately 85% of the total length of the bobsleigh track, called Darmstadt. There we were pushed in a two-man bobsleigh. I was in the front, and my friend Lars was in the back. And we were pushed in this ice channel in Innsbruck, and in front of us they were from curve number 3 and then to curve number 14, and you cannot explain how it is to drive a bobsleigh. So it was just holding the steering handles and then make the best out of it, and we did that until curve number 14. And then in curve number 14, I crashed and on a bobsleigh track out of the last curve, up to the finish line. It's all bobsleigh tracks are built going upwards, and when you then stop on something which is icy going upwards and nobody holds you, what happens then? You go backwards the exactly same way. And we went backwards almost to curve number 10 again, and then front to 14, back to 13, 12, and so we had to crawl out of the bobsleigh in curve number 12. And that was my first experience when the bobsleigh. I said, holy shit, man. It was a crash and burn immediate experience. Okay. And on the first day, you can easily take 1 or 2 crashes. But for every crash you do in a bobsleigh, energy is dragged out of your body. So when 3 days in a row you have been involved in crashes, there is suddenly not much energy left in your tank, so to speak. So after 5 days where I almost think I had crashes every day, on the Friday, I was so tired, and I simply couldn't anymore, that I had to say, okay, for me, it was to hear this time, and then I hope that I can be in a bobsleigh again. And then after 2 months or something, now 1.5 months later, I said, okay, now it's time for me to go bobsleighing again, because this disaster we experienced the first time, that cannot happen twice. But it did. So my first season as a bobsleigh pilot was one disaster, one horror after the other. And in the third or fourth week I was doing bobsleigh, I had a concussion because my head hit the wall, the ice wall, and I fainted, and I don't remember anything for 3 or 4 hours. Just running near the track, and said, "What happened? You crashed in curve 13. Yeah, okay, I crashed but what happened? And who was in the back and stuff like that." So I went to the hospital, and after 5 days in hospital, I remember I went back to the track and I looked at the track, and in the best of Arnold Schwarzenegger style, I said, "I will be back." And I remember that as it was yesterday, I'll be back. But the problem when then the next season came, I simply could not come back. My body was not able to cope with the idea of me being in the front of a bobsleigh again. So I decided to become a brakeman, right, and to assist the others then and be on the back. And already after 2 runs in the back, I could feel that this was not the right situation. Yeah, and there is such a strong correlation between mentality and personality and where you sit in a bobsled, that I wanted to go in the front again, or I would have to stop it. And that I did not know. I did not know that about that correlation, and our coach did not tell us about that. That if you want to be in front of a bobsleigh, if you want to be a pilot, it says a lot about who you are when it comes to driving development processes and stuff like that. But
well,
of course,
I would think it says a lot about the brakeman as well, because I've done the "I'll be back" quite a few times too.
Yes.
Very beat up and very deprived of energy too.
Yeah.
But I didn't have anyone along. I didn't have the responsibility for a guy behind me. So you're still on good terms.
And that is of course that is a big part of if you're not motivated by that responsibility, that people either have trust in you or choose to have trust in you. Yeah, if you don't love that trust which is brought towards you, then you cannot be a great pilot. And it also brings really strong relationships with each other when you're traveling at least 1, 2, 3 bobsleigh seasons. So the ones who have been behind me in a bobsleigh, apart from the tourists, I remember everybody having been behind me in a bobsleigh, and I have very, very strong emotions for everybody who have sat there. And that will always be a part of me, if I can put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is jumping a little maybe, but do you miss that feeling today?
Very much. And I have, since I stopped my career in 2006, I have looked for that. I have looked to replicate that feeling in normal business life at least once again, but I've never succeeded. It's not even, honestly, it's not even close to it. So the strong bonds I have with my former crew, I have really tried hard to get something similar up in a business life, but it's not even close. And I know that other pilots, they tell exactly the same. Yeah, I knew with my crew, they would go through, fire and ice to help me, and I had exactly the same. And if you don't have it that way, when you're not paid to do bobsleigh, at least not much to do it, then you don't do it. But I would do anything for my crew, and I knew that they would do anything for me. And that's a very, 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 very seldom feeling. Yeah. And I've spoken to different people who have talked about their similar situations where they've had it, and people from elite squads in Army and Navy and stuff like that. When they speak about their assignments and their process, it's close to the feelings I have had with being together with my crew.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And also when I doing some people call it motivational speaks. I just call it speaks, and then sometimes there comes motivation out of it. Of course, I choose very much to speak to people, kids, which not have it so easy in life, which have kids who are facing that life is a little bit a struggle, and they get heavily inspired with this strong companionship which there is in bobsleigh. And there was a young girl saying to me when I asked the audience, how do you think that you feel as a pilot when you just crashed, and you crashed with 125 kilometers an hour with 630 kilo, 400 kilo load people and 230 kilo sled, and you go in a crash 125 kilometers an hour down for 1 kilometer. How do you think you feel like a pilot? And there was totally silence in the audience. And this young girl was there and said, not great. I said, not great, but apart from not great, she said, haven't you let them down? Yeah. So I can see that a story today, which is back to 1998 and 2006, which in a normal context has no value anymore, no commercial value, no value at all. Suddenly, because I'm re-entering the sport now, brings up a lot of emotions which I can share with young kids and other people who are facing challenges, and they respond to my experiences from 12, 14, 16 years ago. I would never have thought that was the true value of our concept, because we thought the true value was to go to the Olympics. But we have gained something which is far more important than going to the Olympics. We have gained lifelong friendships and a story which can inspire people in desperate need of inspiration.
Yeah.
So I can live with the fact much better today that even though I was qualified twice for the Olympics, that we were not sent from Denmark because we were only 20th in the world instead of number 10. We were not sent, but I can live much better with that today because I have seen the true value even 14 years after in society.
Well, I'm so glad you say this, because that's kind of my whole point with Athlete Story. The whole mission is to help athletes realize that the real value in their story is the value that story can have to other people. It's nice if you have a gold medal you can show and you can put gold medalist in your title, but the real value, both to yourself and to other people, lie in your story. That's my firm belief, and I think your example just confirms that. And sometimes we don't even know what story it is. Like you're saying yourself, you didn't expect that to be a real point.
No. Yeah.
So.
Exactly. And I was speaking with a sport official half a year ago, something, a very high-ranked sport official. And I said my own perception of how sport is developing is that some stories, being them number 10, 12, 20 or 30 in the world, ranked in the world, can have a higher impact and be more important to society as some medals. And I said, Olympic medals. And I said, I know this is easy for me to say. I don't have an Olympic medal myself, and I didn't even go to the Olympics. But it's my really deep belief that it's not that a medal itself is not necessarily of value. It's what you do with your medal. It's the voice. It's how you raise your voice when you gain that medal. And of course, I cannot quote him 100% correctly, but he said, I think time has come to an extreme shift in elite sport, that it will in future be more about what you do with what you have experienced more than the value itself. Of course, in some countries where the governments are investing a lot of money in gaining Olympic medals, it will still be earning medals would be the main storytelling. But there are so many of the approximately 200 different nations competing in the Olympics where it's not about the medals.
Yeah, but the medal is a nice measurement for one success criteria, right? or
Yeah.
criterium, I guess it's called.
Yeah.
But what is success to you like?
Yeah, to me, success is yeah, it's a very good question. To me, success is about setting realistic goals, and some people even need a little bit more than realistic goals. Let's say a little bit not so realistic goals to be able to get the utmost out of oneself, but then to live a dedicated and professional life towards the goal, or aiming for the goal, is success. So it's more the way I look at life today is more that the importance of life is to live one's dream more than just live a life which you can live, if you understand what I mean. So to me, it's much more about the nourishing dreams, the really important dreams in one's life, instead of just living the life which others have laid out for you, if I can, or you are expected to live.
Would alignment be a word that kind of describes that, being aligned with who you are and what your dreams are and what?
Yeah, or you could say harmony, but alignment is a very, very, very good word. There needs to be an alignment between who your inner voice tells you that you are, and what you do. Some young people are brought up and having this inner voice that actually I'm born for something special. I'm not supposed to do the things all the other ones are doing. You can imagine who I'm speaking about now. And I have always have that inner voice that I am not as all the other ones. So I am here in life to do something which is special. And I still have that inner voice inside myself. So when 99% of people is going in one direction, you can be sure that I'm the 1% going in another direction. And I have at least for the last 10 years, I have tried to fight this, and not to accept it, but it doesn't work for me. I have to follow my inner voice that I'm here to disrupt things, I'm here to do things differently, and I'm here to use creativity and a certain mindset to help people looking at different processes and different projects from other angles of life.
And as I hear it from your story, also kind of to guide people or take them along with you on this journey, as you did as a Bob pilot. With your...
Exactly. Let's say 85% of my time now in life, I'm asked for help to transform one situation into another one. Most oftenly, it's about bringing people who have no job into a job situation again. And all my way of thinking, which has for the last 10 years given me a lot of bruises and a lot of not so funny situations, let me put it that way, challenging situations, I can now see, okay, now I understand what my qualities, why I have these qualities, because I can help people looking at opportunities in a different way than they are capable of themselves. So to speak, now I have found my frequency. I have found out that the qualities who made me establish a Danish national bobsleigh team, I now have found another channel on how to use these qualities to help people.
Right, because you've also tried feeling extremely out of alignment, I guess.
I have been so sick of not being in alignment.
Literally speaking, right?
Literally speaking, I had a stress collapse end of 2013 because I was fighting the how do you call it, inevitable. I was fighting facts. I could not find the accept that this I was doing something which I was not supposed to do, and I continued in that, and it made me extremely sick. And for a long time, it actually looked that I would never be able to rejoin the working force and contribute in working life again. So I had almost 2.5 years where I was just fighting to get back on my feet. So of course, I value life differently now, having looked into a scenario for the future where it looks that I could never be able to do what I was supposed to do, and now that I found back in life, I'm so grateful for that. and now with even more motivation, I want to have the best out of it.
So what do you think drove you so far in the wrong direction, so to speak, so that you got sick and hospitalized?
It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy. It was because I was looking more. There was something I was good at. There was something I was extremely good at, and I had this inner voice telling me, when you are extremely good at something, you have an obligation also to do that job. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And today I know, no, the only obligation you have is to make yourself happy. Yeah, and that's the one thing you must do. That is to choose work challenges, sport challenges, whatever challenges it is, companionships, relationships. You have to choose what makes you happy, because that brings you in this balance, and on a hormone level, actually, it works that way. That if you do things which makes you really happy, then you live a healthier life. So I have made a lot of choices the last 2-3 years who could get me in the right direction. And I tell about that experience, of course, when I meet kids and also people as such, and tell them about that. I made terrible choices because I was good at something which I did not really love. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So today I choose to do what I love, and funny enough, it often shows that what I really love to do work-wise, I'm also good at. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that reminds me very much, and I'm very passionate about it. So it's almost, when you do something which you're really good at, it's almost like you are working with effortless ease. So instead of investing a shitload of energy into the process gives you energy. And that reminds me of being a bobslayer. Yeah. Because even though it was hard work, I was doing it with almost effortless ease. Yeah. I know you can relate to that.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
I was wondering, when your project of going to the Olympics, it didn't end up with you going to the Olympics, and I think you tried for the next Olympics, and then how did that all end, and how did you experience that whole transition out of sports?
It ended up the way, actually, I qualified for the Olympics twice together with the first time it was in the 2-man bobsleigh, and the next time it was in the 4-man, in the big 4-man bobsleigh, and I'm extremely proud of that within 8 years we actually managed to qualify. In every other country in the world, maybe not Holland, but in the Netherlands, maybe in every other country in the world, we would have been sent as proud ambassadors for our country. But coming from Denmark, at that time at least, things did not work that way. At that time, you were only picked for the Olympics if you could prove that you had a medal chance. Yeah. And we were only 20th in the world, and we could not prove by being 20th in the world, which in fact is a great result. Yeah, being 20th in the world, we could not prove that it would be possible for us to go to either Salt Lake or Turin and be in the top 10 or make a medal. Mm-hmm. 3 months when we stopped the concept in February 2006, I was so tired. I was so tired that I could have slept for 3 months, and I was struggling with telling. I was struggling with telling the story of the 8 years. At that time, I couldn't. I could up until the day we were picked for the Olympics. I could tell the story. The day after we were not picked, and then we stopped the concept, I could not tell the story anymore. It was just too painful. I think it was 3 or maybe it was 4 months later, the Danish National Olympic Committee decided to change the rules for the future, so that if you have the international qualification criteria, you would be sent. So with the rules today, I would have gone to the Olympics twice in my life. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that it was due to our project that these rules were changed, but I'm pretty sure that there was somebody in the Danish Olympic Committee having the feeling that it cannot be, that we have probably maybe one of the best stories in many years we can tell, and together with the other Winter Olympians, that they didn't have the rule set to send us, and they have changed that now. So in generations after us, If you are qualified for the Olympics and internationally, you are going to the Olympics. And I know even if our contribution was just a tiny little one, I'm very proud of that contribution.
Yeah. And I think you have a little bit of a project going of maybe making a future team.
There is every fourth year I get my 5 minutes of fame, because I'm asked to be a commentary expert commentator on the expert on the television. And in this winter I was on the Danish television. I was doing the commentary on skeleton and bobsleigh. And I decided when we were doing that commentary that in 2026 I had this feeling when I was speaking. I was doing the commentary with so much passion and so much understanding, and I had this feeling I'm seeing so many things now in bobsleigh and skeleton I have never seen before. So I had this feeling now is the time to make a new decision, and I made the decision that I want to make a project so that Denmark could go with the bobsleigh team in 2026, where the Winter Olympics will be either in Stockholm or in Milan. And when it's in Stockholm, it means that the bobsleigh will be in Sigulda, which is in Letland. What is Letland called in English?
Latvia, I think.
Latvia, thank you. In Latvia, which would be in Latvia. But if Winter Olympics will be held in our neighboring country in Sweden, Denmark, of course, has to be there. I mean, that for me, that's obvious. And the old guys from the crew, they have exactly the same feeling. So they have all said, okay, we are helping with whatever we can to get a Danish team going there. And even though if it's in Milan, the bobsleigh competition will be in Cortina d'Ampezzo, which is a very, very, very beautiful site, and so much good story about bobsleighing there. I've driven the track myself. Even though it's closed now, I've been doing bobsleighing in Cortina d'Ampezzo, so that's also a good story. Mm. And to that comes also that, the stories about children and their parents. Many children, they copy their parents. Mm-hmm. And my son, when he was 6 years old, he came to me and my wife and said, when can I do bobsleighing? And we said, when you are 16. And we thought that he would then forget it, of course. But he did not forget. So a year ago, he came to us and say, have you seen that in January 2020, there are Youth Olympic Games in Switzerland? I would like to go there. And then Hannah and I, we were looking at each other and said, what are we doing now? Because if we say, no, you cannot go there, if we push that way, his willpower will be even bigger. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we were having a very thorough discussion on that, and we decided then to support him. He at that time he thought he should go then in the monobob, which is a newly developed concept for the youngsters in bobsleigh. But it has shown that out of logistical situation and funding and stuff like that he will have to go in the skeleton. Right. So now Denmark has actually now joined the international skeleton community, and a couple of weeks ago he made his first appearance in the competition, and he won. There were two competitors, but he won. But just to manage to survive skeleton as an ice channel is such a huge performance itself that I'm really impressed by his ability to work disciplined and focused and to do that. So now we have promised him to help him to the Youth Olympic Games in January 2020, and what comes after that we're not thinking about that. We don't have any ideas about that, because actually he is not a skeleton athlete. He is a decathlete. He's a track and field athlete. He is doing decathlon. But he has a capability also to do a great job in the ice channel. And funny enough, when I visit potential sponsors and I'm talking about the decathlon, what is that? And blah 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 blah. But when I'm talking about the life in the ice channel, people's ears they grow 10 times as big as when we're talking about a decathlete in track and field. So again, it has proven that doing a sports concept which everybody cannot relate to, is actually just an enormous great story.
Yeah.
So now we transformed the storytelling from previous project now into story selling. So our whole commercial process now is built upon story selling. So we lay out the possibilities to work together with us, but instead of when I was like I did when I was a sales rep. So now, are you going to help write down on the order here? We lay out opportunities for as many people as possible, and they must do the shark bite themselves. I want them to buy instead of us to sell, and that's a totally extremely big mind shift for a former sales rep like I have been in my life.
But that's kind of the modern way of selling, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I know that, but still, don't forget, I ran this way around in the circus arena for 30 years of selling life, and this is the other way around. So it's not easy for me, yeah. So it's much easier for me to write a LinkedIn post saying, "Hey, I need you. You need to buy some sponsorships," than instead of just doing content marketing and said this blah 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 blah. You know, so it's more easy for me to do this way around in the circus arena. But I will. It's a good process for me as well.
And then I guess it's about finding that value proposition, and yours is the story and not necessarily the medal or the result.
Ours is now to do something which nobody else does. We can proudly say that we have the smallest national team in Denmark because there's only one athlete. And you have experienced that situations yourself,
yes.
being just one. And I think that is just a great story if you can frame it right. If you can say, I value that there are a lot of people who wants to go in one direction. It's very important for our country. But it's also important for our country that there is just 1 out of 100 or even maybe 1,000 who wants to go in the other direction. The question is, from whom can the Danish companies learn the most? Mm-hmm. The 99 going in one direction or the one who dares to go in the other one? I know the answer to that. Yeah. But I also know that it takes a top level decision to sponsor a juvenile of 16 years of age who is supported by his parents because else he cannot do it. Yeah. I know the decision making is not easy, and most probably we will face a situation. We have now 12 sponsors now, and we need 20. Most probably we will end up with a sponsor portfolio, most probably, of almost only entrepreneurs or sponsorship decisions take on a top management level, because it's too risky taking such a decision if you are, let's say, just a marketing manager who have to have signed every decision. Yeah. So this is
but it's also about
your
story being relatable, and it's much more relatable to an entrepreneur. That
yes,
because he's an entrepreneurial athlete.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So he will have lots of lessons and inspiration to give to an entrepreneur that might fall flat in a big corporation.
Exactly.
They might not even understand that journey that he's on.
No, he doesn't. And that's why he can only do it because we have chosen to support him in this way. He knows that, we know that. This cannot be, we have no federation, we are the federation ourselves. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And but as to the fact that we are in, I think, 3rd or 4th generation in our family, in both sides of the family, we are entrepreneurs. So this is being entrepreneurs. It sounds stupid, but that's working with effortless ease for us. Yeah, understanding that we cannot define the future, we cannot control the future. Everything about the future is insecure, is something which motivates us and gives us a lot of energy instead of the opposite. Yeah, so it's just finding together with the people who can relate to that. This is a normal way of thinking for us. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But of course, problem is that means we need some space. Yeah, because we think in a different way, and not in every environment is capable of including people with an entrepreneurial mindset. Mm-hmm. So we have to find the people around us who can support us and with whom we can work together with this. And there we can feel that new wins, the new wins in Danish sport environment, because we can feel there is much more openness in Danish elite sports towards new sport concepts. Yeah, so creativity, trying something new which has not done before, is looked at with a different openness, as in for 10 or 15 years ago. So that motivates me a lot.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to do this only for ourselves. Of course, we hope that after my son, there will be other generations of skeleton drivers. And we would like to really found a federation which can live happily for 100 years and create value for 4 or 5 generations to come. That's of course our ambition.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. That's very inspiring. Very inspiring.
Thank you, Anja.
Okay, so we've covered quite a bit of terrain here. Talking about anxiety, your personal experience with that, this whole entrepreneurial journey, both for you and for your son, as I understand it. And the whole story selling concept. So I don't know, is there anything you would like to say pretty much who are the type of listeners that would be listening to Athlete Story, or is there anyone you would like to see on the show?
Oh, that is a very good question. I don't know if you have had any of the speed skating guys, the Danish speed skating guys, but actually the one Jesper Dyrby Karlsson, who was the national coach of this of the Danish speed skating guys. He's been traveling around the world now for the last 12 months, and I think I know that he came back now to Europe. I'm very curious about his story. How much risk willing capital did they actually start with? Was it also $0 as we started? Or was there some funding to start with, and how will the future be for the Danish speed skaters, or a similar concept from around the world? I can be inspired by many different people. I can tell you
the pioneering stories.
Yeah, the pioneering stories, the startups, the startup stories of elite sport.
Oh,
because
that's a nice word.
That's where I can be inspired and move to next level. Because right now I'm sitting here and almost doing a full-time job beside my full-time job. Yeah, because I'm founding a federation.
Yeah.
And there must be somebody who has found some shortcuts. Every football club has found some rich guy who with a lot of money who invests a lot of million. I don't know how to find that extremely rich guy who's willing just to lay down 1 million euros or something like that. So I believe in that. I have to build up a business which can create value to be able to have enough money to do the sport.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's the guy. That's the type of guys I need to get in contact with.
Okay.
And they can for sure find me on LinkedIn under my name, so then they can get in contact with me easily.
Okay. So I can invite other listeners to connect with you on LinkedIn then.
You can do that. I would be more than grateful for that.
Okay.
And of course, and I'm very grateful for here to have the opportunity to share my experiences, and you having facilitated the dialogue also gives me a new inspiration on how to I tell the story today differently than I did 4 years ago, or 8 years, or 12 years ago. So because I grow older, I get more experience as a human being. I have tried more things. I also reflect upon my own experience differently. And that such a scenario, such a opportunity like this gives new reflections, which I'm
and
very
every
happy
time
for.
you share it, you get new input as well, like that little girl telling you. Yeah,
Exactly.
So guys, get out there, share your story. You don't know in what way you might touch one person. And if it's just with one person, you've made a difference, right?
That's correct. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.